Today I am in Sausalito walking by some of the houseboats over here, and I want to talk about the layoff survival guide that people need for the rest of 2025 and really going into 2026 because the layoffs really haven't been this bad since the GFC. And this is something that's hitting more and more American households right now. A couple of years ago, everybody just kind of brushed this off, but now that more and more people are being affected by business slowdowns and layoffs and people losing jobs and having a hard time finding a new job, I thought it would be a good time to give you a layoff survival guide. That way you can be prepared for this to happen in case it does happen to you, and it's going to be a lot easier to make it through to the other side. And every week we keep hearing about more layoffs being announced. Amazon just reported that they're going to be slashing 15% of its human resources team. Nestle says they're going to be getting rid of 15,000 workers worldwide over the next couple of years due to automation. Salesforce recently laid off 4,000 customer support roles after figuring out how to use AI for that instead. And a lot of the experts are coming straight up and saying, listen, we need to prepare for a slowdown, okay? Because the landscape is shifting dramatically when it comes to the type of jobs that are going to be available due to automation, as well as a slower economy. So the first thing to know in this layoff survival guide is what you should be doing before you even get laid off. Hopefully you don't, but in case you do, there are some preparation steps you should be taking. If you hear rumors or you sense instability at work, don't wait to get organized. You should be reviewing your finances already, start saving early, build up that emergency fund, ideally 6 months or more of monthly expenses ready to go just in case, and cut back on unnecessary spending right now. Don't wait till you already lose the job. That's going to help you build up the emergency fund. It's going to help you pay down debt if you have any, and you're essentially getting ahead while you still can, while you still have a decent amount of income. Also, at your work, you should figure out what kind of benefits you have and maximize them to their fullest, especially if you sense that you could be on the chopping block. For example, if you have a flexible spending account, use those funds before you lose access to them. You can also schedule medical and dental appointments while your insurance is still active, because most people's insurance plans are tied to their job. That can be very expensive if you lose your insurance. You can also collect a bunch of your personal items or data that you might lose access to that might be tied to your job. Like, for example, if you have an email address that's tied to your work and there are certain things in there you need to get, make sure you have copies of all of that before it's too late. You just got to make sure you don't take anything that legally belongs to your company and it's property that doesn't belong to you. The next thing that you can do is stay connected. Well, what do I mean by that? Now is the time to strengthen your network, particularly when it comes to your colleagues or people that work for other companies that might be able to help you in case of a job loss. Now is a great time to also update and refresh your resume, your LinkedIn profile, if that's something that you use, and make sure that all of your connections are current. A lot of job recruiters actually say that it's important to always act as if you're quietly on the market, which I think is kind of interesting and also sad at the same time, because it means there's really no job security anymore, which I think a lot of people already intuitively know, but always kind of like being on the lookout for another job, even when you think you got a good one, it's not really a good feeling to have. But it's the reality of where we're at moving into 2026. You can also join job groups online or in person. You can reconnect with old colleagues and build a support network of people who can share leads and advice with you. But just make sure that you keep all those communications off of your work email and away from company devices. Don't use your company's cell phone or your company's email server to make these connections, because they're going to realize that you're already on your way out the door, and that's going to put you even higher on the chopping block. Which is also kind of ridiculous, because if you always kind of have to be one step ahead of the game and always kind of be on the lookout for a job, even though you already have one, companies should be used to this by now. But it's like they want you to have your full loyalty to them, but they can just let you go at the drop of a hat just to save a few extra bucks, Now, if you do end up getting laid off, the next step is you need to take care of business. Well, what do I mean by that? I mean, read every document that you receive, especially anything that mentions your final pay or your last day or a severance package, anything like that. Make sure you know what you're entitled to right from the get-go. You should be asking about your health insurance. You should find out if you're eligible for unemployment. And in some cases, your severance package can even be negotiated, especially if you have data showing what others in your industry have received. And honestly, you'll be lucky to even get a severance package with the way things are going right now. So consider yourself lucky if you even get one. And also, before signing anything, you should consider talking to a lawyer if you think that your layoff was discriminatory or retaliatory. And also means you should be keeping records of all communications between you and your employer. But at the same time, you don't want to burn bridges, and you don't want to take it too personally. You know, people take it personally and then they risk burning a bridge with an employer. But if you stay professional, then you never know when a former boss might become a future reference, or maybe they move companies somewhere else and they really like you and they want to hire you at the new company that they join, you know? So opportunities can be had if you don't burn the bridge. So let's say you've already lost the job. Well, what next? You need to keep your cool. Experts recommend giving yourself permission to grieve if necessary. Keep your daily routine going as much as possible, and wake up at the same time, stay active, and connect with supportive people. I mean, I probably wouldn't wake up at the same time. I would take advantage of being able to sleep in, but that's because I'm not a morning person. But now's a good time to start reflecting on what you want to do next. Because, for example, you can ask yourself a question like, do I even want to stay in the same line of work moving forward? Or could I use this as an opportunity to pivot into a new career or build new skills altogether and try something new or do something I've always wanted to try? I think that's a great opportunity, actually. Quick little side story. On the last job I had, I was working at a restaurant as basically a busboy. That was the last job, real job that I had. I had just gotten my real estate license, and literally within a week or two after getting that real estate license, I was fired from that job without really any serious reason given why. But how I handled it was like this. Instead of being extremely worried about what I'm going to do and freaking out because I have no income, and I didn't have an emergency fund back then either. And we're talking when the economy was bad, guys. This was in 2009, okay? So it wasn't that easy to get another job. But I figured, you know what? I'm going to pour myself 100% into real estate. I am going to take this opportunity to march full speed ahead. And that's exactly what I did. I went to the office 7 days a week. I learned as much as I could, as fast as I could. I learned how to make deals, and I sat in the office waiting for people to walk in and get some new clients right off the bat. And lo and behold, within just a couple of months, I was able to start kind of replacing my income at the restaurant and build up from there, because I gave it my all right from the beginning. And it was exciting to try something new and move away from being an employee to finally working for myself. So that was very cool. So don't treat it like a crisis, treat it like an opportunity is kind of the message here. But then after you've given it some thought, the next thing that you can do is let everybody know that you're open to work. You know, go to your LinkedIn profile and use the open to work feature. Post your resume on the job boards and reach out to some contacts. Let people know that you're looking to get hired again. You could even be doing this day one if you wanted to, but sometimes people need a little period of reflection to see if they even want to continue in their field. You can mention your job search to colleagues or friends, and that can open some doors unexpectedly. And if you're still officially employed during a notice period, like say you're part of a company that gives you a warn notice, you know, and you have 2 weeks or a month or even 2 months sometimes that you know that you're going to be losing that job, well, that gives you an opportunity to springboard into another job without ever even losing any income. But just remember that the job market out there is very tough, and it's normal to face rejection, guys. Like, I have gone over this. People have literally submitted sometimes thousands of job applications that have only ended up with a handful of interviews. So it can be tough. I'm not claiming it's easy, and I'm not claiming that I'm out there trying to do it, because I'm sure it's very difficult, and I can't imagine what people are going through that are searching for a job right now. But I wanted to talk about this because a layoff is kind of one of the toughest things that somebody can go through, especially when it comes unexpectedly. But the key is to stay proactive throughout all of it. Like, everybody should be on notice right now. Unless you have some sort of contract and your job is rock solid and you can't be fired, you should be on notice and just kind of be on the lookout for what else is out there, but also take some of these steps that we talked about to be prepared in case it does happen to you. But the main thing is you have to keep moving forward. You can't give up. You can't get down on yourself. You can't get depressed about it. You have to just accept it as the fact of life. This is where things are at right now. This is the state of the economy. And the more preparation you do ahead of time, the better you're going to fare when it actually does happen. Check out the Cadillac. Vintage. Don't see too many rides like that around anymore. And believe me, guys, this is a situation that's probably only going to get worse. I just saw a story today about how Amazon hopes to replace 600,000 US workers with robots by the year 2033. I know that's not tomorrow, but it is kind of right around the corner. We're only talking 7 or 8 years from now. Let's face it, 2025 is almost over. So it really only gives people about a 7-year runway, and that's if it doesn't happen even faster than what they're predicting. And this was a leaked document. So this was not like a public announcement that Amazon is coming out and saying they're going to get rid of 600,000 people. They kind of got caught saying this unofficially. The documents are showing that Amazon's robotics team is working towards automating 75% of the company's entire operations, and they expect to ditch 160,000 US roles that would otherwise be needed just by 2027. So they're already planning on starting to shed people within the next 2 years due to robotics and the advancement of automation and AI. This would save Amazon about 30 cents on every item that the Amazon warehouses delivers to their customers, and it expected to save the company $12.6 billion between 2025 and 2027. So this is already something they're working on right now and are going to be starting to implement within just a year from now. And I know not everybody works at Amazon or not every job can be automated, but you got to understand that this is the direction that a lot of companies are moving towards. Everybody is moving towards maximum profits, and that means less people working there. Of course, right away, a spokesperson for Amazon comes out and tries to cover the whole thing up, and they say, well, this leaked document just reflects the perspective of just one team, and it does not represent the company's overall hiring strategy right now or moving forward. So it's like, yeah, they come out and say stuff like that because they're caught, guys. So they're trying to save face and make it look not as bad as it really is, because it is bad. And then, of course, now's a good time for them for this to be leaked, because then they can come out with a counter argument and say, well, look, we're looking to hire about 250,000 seasonal workers right now. But remember, those are just seasonal people that they need to help with the extra holiday workload, and that's it. So we're talking 3 or 4 months maximum, and that's going to be it. But make no mistake, Amazon is one of the largest and most profitable companies in the world. And once they figure out how to implement automation to its fullest, you best believe that those tactics are going to be implemented by other employers in the future. People are going to use a copy and paste method of what Amazon's doing to save money for their companies too. In fact, if Amazon actually makes this happen, if this becomes a reality, Amazon is going to go from one of the biggest employers in the United States to one of the largest job destroyers in the United States. So all these companies that look like they're saving the economy right now, like Amazon, 250,000 people being hired, rest assured that's temporary until they can figure out how to replace you and increase their bottom line. And like I said before, what's the end game with all of this? If everybody is being replaced by AI, well, who is going to buy all the products from Amazon if people can't even afford their basic necessities? Nobody's going to be buying all of this unnecessary stuff from Amazon if they don't have a job or they can't even afford to have a roof over their head. So I don't know what the end goal with all this stuff is, but all we can do is keep an eye on it, and I can keep you posted. So with all this going on, I figured now's a good time to bring up something else that happens to a lot of people. Once you start doing better in life, once you kind of get into your mid-30s or so, that's usually when you start hitting a more comfortable period in life when your income is high enough where you finally have a decent amount of disposable income, all your bills are paid if you're being responsible. But the problem is that can lead to some midlife money traps that ultimately end up draining your wealth, because when you get too comfortable, people start overspending and believing that they're in a stronger financial position than they really are, and that can lead to problems. So let's go over 7 midlife money traps that could end up draining your wealth if you're not careful. The first one is allowing your spending to increase with rising income. This is a mistake that almost everybody makes. When they start making more money, they start spending even more money. And that's why you see a record amount of people who make 6-figure incomes that are living paycheck to paycheck. There's no reason on earth why somebody making $150K a year should be paycheck to paycheck, but it happens because the spending gets out of control. You feel rich. You feel like, wow, I can finally have that Porsche, or I can finally buy that bigger house, and it gets out of control fast. No matter how much you make, it can easily be gone within just a snap of a finger. But the problem with doing this is that your rate of savings, or investing for that matter, never increases. And the opportunity cost is gigantic because that money could be invested or used to grow your retirement, or even just put you in a position to be able to afford a better life down the road if you just save a little more and invest a little more now. The second thing that people get caught up in is they don't diversify their investments. Generally, people who even do make investments, they end up concentrating their investments into what they see as sure bets instead of diversifying and accepting normal rates of growth. Look at all the people that poured into Bitcoin, or people that are betting big on Nvidia or things like that, basically gambling. And it's okay to have something invested into speculative investments in case it really does pay off, but you don't want to be betting the farm on it. Sometimes you can get lucky and this can work out, but more times than not, you're not going to be so lucky, and you're going to be wishing you would have went the steady and safe route and had more sustainable long-term growth and not have lost everything trying to get rich quick. The third one is really big, especially right now, which is that a lot of people underestimate the impact of inflation. A lot of people usually end up failing to account for just how big it can be, and inflation can really drain your retirement savings or any of your investments a lot faster than people think. Just ask people who have just recently retired or are planning on retiring in the next few years, and I'm sure a lot of them will tell you that they didn't think that they were going to need as much as they actually do because they didn't plan properly for inflation. And it's not really their fault, because nobody could have known inflation was going to be this bad. I mean, we haven't had inflation this bad since the 1970s. So we're talking 50 years ago was the last time it was a major problem. So it's hard to plan for stuff like that. But think about it like this. With just 30 years at 2% inflation per year, your original amount that you have saved is now worth about half of what it was at the start. So that's why it's important to have your money invested as much as possible and keep it invested for as long as possible to ensure that your returns are going to be as high as they possibly can be. So when you are ready to retire, you're going to have more than you think you need. And this fourth one is kind of the kiss of death for a lot of people. And we know many Americans, unfortunately, are falling into this trap, which is carrying high interest credit card debt. You need to avoid this at all costs, guys, pretty much throughout your entire life. We've all been a victim of it at some point. Most likely, I even was too. But once I got out of it, the last time I had credit card debt, I was 27 years old, and when I was 27 years old, I made that final payment, and I also made a promise to myself that I was never going to do this again, and I never have. Do I still use credit cards to buy things? Yeah, I do. I take advantage of the points, I take advantage of the cash back, but I never buy something that I can't afford to pay for in cash right now. I just use it as a tool to get free stuff. That's it. Too many people are living off of credit cards these days because they can't afford their lifestyle. They're living far beyond their means, and this is a huge mistake. If you actually do need money for whatever reason, you're much better off taking a personal loan, for example, or maybe you only pay 7 or 8 or 9% interest. Or I hate to even say this, but using buy now, pay later can be a better option than a credit card, because it gives you more time to pay it off without paying any interest. But the penalties can be just as high as using a credit card if you don't pay it off in time. And that brings me right to the next thing that people do, which is falling for get-rich-quick schemes. A lot of times people see what everybody else is doing and they hear about different ways that people get rich, and seemingly overnight, it seems like people went from rags to riches and everybody wants to have a piece of that. But when it comes to money, you always have to assume that there's no upside without taking risk, okay? And just when things are finally going well in your financial life, say in your mid-30s, and you finally have got your act together, now's not the time to fall for these get-rich-quick schemes or an investment that seems to be too good to be true, because that can set you behind another decade or two and can impact the rest of your life. If you want to increase your income, look for a better job. Get a side hustle, start a side business, something that's safe and reliable to increase your income. Don't look for risky investment strategies or get-rich-quick schemes that seem too good to be true, because whenever it sounds too good to be true, it certainly is. So the sixth mistake that people make is not building an emergency fund during good times. When things are going well, you need to be saving a good portion of that income for when things are not going well, because inevitably you're going to have tough times at some point in your life, unless you're just extremely lucky, and consider yourself very lucky because you'll just have that extra emergency fund that you never actually needed. Fantastic. The old traditional advice with emergency funds was always 3 to 6 months, guys, but with how expensive life is today and how expensive the cost of living is, I think people really need to be aiming for a 12-month emergency fund. If you can do even more than that, great. Because I've gone over several stories in the past where people have been out of work for 12, 18 months, or sometimes even longer in this economy. So you really can't have too much saved up. Do you want to have it all in just the savings account? No. But at least if you have, 2 or 3 years of emergency savings, and some of it can be tied up into liquid assets like the stock market or your portfolio, whatever, that can easily be accessed, that's okay. As long as it's something that you can access right now and you're not taking it out of your retirement savings, so to speak. And one of the biggest mistakes that people inevitably make when they start making a comfortable amount of money is they buy too much house or too nice of a car. We kind of covered this a little bit earlier with the lifestyle inflation, but it deserves its own quick little segment here because it's one of the most common traps that people end up falling into. So many people fall into the trap of wanting to keep up with the Joneses. They look at their neighbor and they say, oh, look, Jeff just bought a brand new car and I make more money than he does. So why can't I do it? Well, you don't know what Jeff's financial situation is. You don't know if he just won the lottery. You don't know if he got a large inheritance, or you don't know if he's just up to his eyeballs in debt and living far beyond his means, is about ready to have his house foreclosed on tomorrow. But people give into this stuff because they don't want to look like they're falling behind. They want to impress their friends and their families and make it look like they're doing well and have the high status in society. And there's nothing wrong with buying yourself something nice as a reward, but only once you can truly afford it, guys. Like, for example, a brand new car. If you have to have a $700 or $1,000 a month car payment to afford that brand new car, chances are you probably can't afford it. Because if you need to borrow that much to buy the car, then you really don't have the money. Otherwise, you would be able to just pay cash for the car, or, at least pay for half of it in cash and have a much lower monthly payment. That's a sign that you can't afford it. Same thing goes for the house. People end up borrowing beyond what they can actually afford when they buy the house, or they fall for these mortgage rate buy down scams, essentially. And then they end up finding out later on that, wait, I shouldn't have done this. I really can't afford this house anymore. Some of the smartest people that I have heard from that have bought a home recently over the past couple of years bought homes that they could easily afford. Meaning that, if they said they could qualify for a $500,000 house, they ended up buying a $300,000 or $350,000 house, far below the number that they could qualify for. That way, if they do fall on hard financial times, they're not going to be struggling to make their mortgage payment, or not going to fall behind on their property taxes. Or when there's an increase in those property taxes or an increase in the insurance, you can easily afford it. Or you're not forced to have your car repoed because you lost your job. A paid off car doesn't get repoed, guys. And to me, Pretty much everything I just covered in this video just seems like common sense. But there is not a lot of common sense out there anymore, and there's a lot of bad financial advice online. And even though I don't consider my channel or even this video financial advice, a lot of these things I'm talking about can be used as a blueprint to make sure that you never have to worry about money ever again. This is not hard stuff to do. It's very simple, and anybody can do it. But too many people fall into these traps that we talked about, and they end up blowing it. Let's face it, you don't get too many chances in life when it comes to getting ahead financially. Like, you might have a good run for like 5 or 7 years with a good job and be able to really stack away cash. But if you end up blowing it and giving into that lifestyle inflation, you might have just spent your only opportunity that you ever would have had in your life to kind of get ahead and build wealth. And you might be working paycheck to paycheck forever after that if you end up losing that good job and you're forced to have a downgrade in this economy. So I'm telling you, save it while the getting's good, and you'll never have to worry about money again. But if you don't take those good opportunities and use it to the fullest whenever you have the chance, you're probably going to regret it forever. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.